It's over, sort of, for now. The Senate is about to pass a spending bill to end the three-day government shutdown. The legislation goes next to the House, and then the president will sign it. Leaders on both sides finally reached a deal to end the stalemate earlier. It's only temporary, though. It's a short-term measure to fund the government through February 8th. Democrats ended up caving, but that's not how Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sees it.
The reason the Republican majority had such difficulty finding consensus is they could never get a firm grip on what the president of their party wanted to do. These days, you never know who to deal with when it comes to the Republicans. President Trump turned away from not one, but two bipartisan compromises. Each would have averted this shutdown. President Trump's unwillingness to compromise caused the Trump shutdown and brought us to this moment. The Trump shutdown will soon end, but the work must go on, and it will.
We have word that the Senate has just passed the bill, and President Trump earlier said he's pleased that Democrats have finally come to their senses.
What the president did clearly worked. The vote just came in 81-18. I would say that those numbers are much more in the president's favor than in Senator Schumer's favor. I'm not sure what changed for him and what he gained other than maybe Nancy Pelosi taking a bunch of Republican members out for dinner to celebrate their shutdown. I'm not sure what other positive things came out of this weekend for Democrats. Democrat members.
As for Dreamers who still don't know what their fate is with immigration unresolved, here's what the White House says.
I think that they should storm Capitol Hill and protest there because that is the place that has held up this discussion. Democrats are the one that shut this discussion down by forcing a government shutdown.
All right, Greg, I'll go to you first for anything you want to talk about, but I would tee up that Senator Phil Gramm, former senator, used to say, don't take a hostage you're not willing to shoot.
Oh,
that's what ended up
couldn't agree
happening
more.
With the Democrats. But we have another thing we need to address.
What's on my head?
Yes, what happened to you 3 minutes before we walked in here?
The door opened and hit me in the head.
It's an unsafe show, just so you know. I got a second-degree burn. You got concussed.
Are you okay?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm a little lightheaded.
You're a trooper. You're here.
Yeah, I am. It's pretty good. It was basically a 3-day weekend for the shutdown. It was like, it wasn't really a shutdown. It was like a supermarket where one aisle is closed.
Right.
And then everybody's back to business. I think the mistake that the Democrats made was taking a certain segment of greater society, i.e. what is called the Dreamers, though I resent that. I think we're all Dreamers, and putting them in front of a lot of people. So they put the Dreamers in front of other undocumented immigrants from other countries. They put them in front of immigrants who are actually waiting in line. You're putting them in front of American citizens who are waiting for their benefits, or American citizens and the military, or even fallen heroes. So I think it was a losing argument for them to attach this to a spending bill because you were putting American citizens in the back seat.
Yeah, it's hard to vote against a bill because of something that is not in it. And I think the Republicans strategically were smart. Everything that they added to the CR were things that the Democrats liked. The funding of the government, the CHIP money for 6 years. And so it's almost harder to keep basically arguing for something that is not in there. But they did get the concession that an up or down vote will be held on DACA in the Senate by February 8th.
But it's not promised. It's just a pledge. It's kind of uncertain. What I mean by it's not a promise, it is a promise. It's not guaranteed, Dana.
Right.
So for the Democrats, when you see Chuck Schumer up there saying, hey, here's what we've done, I think from his position, we've revealed that the Republicans can be very hard on the Dreamers, and most Americans want a deal for the Dreamers. And secondly, the polls have shown that most Republicans would have been blamed. But Schumer, and I think this is particularly true for the Democratic base, caved. I mean, he basically said this could look bad for Democrats if you were to follow the kind of spin, what Greg was just saying about, it's about the military, or it's about putting the Dreamers ahead of somebody in the government or government functions for people who are getting Social Security checks or whatever. I don't know. But the problem for Schumer and the Democrats is the Dreamers, the Hispanic caucus, I think a lot of people in the base who just think, Democrats are just feckless.
Well, in a way, Jesse, I wonder about the Democrats. We talk about the Republican Civil War, but the Republicans actually were remarkably united through this period. And the headlines for Democrats, especially in those red states where they have Democratic senators that are up for re-election, it became harder for them to swallow a lot of the headlines that were coming their way. And Senator Schumer sided with them over the more progressive part of his party.
Well, Juan just said the Democrats are feckless, and Schumer caved. I think he's the one that got hit in the head.
That was a long time ago.
I completely agree with both Juan and you, Dana. Crying Chuck caved. It was the Schumer surrender. He totally miscalculated on Trump's core values. Why would Trump blink when you're prioritizing illegal aliens over the U.S. military? He walked into an ambush of his own making, and now he looks weak going forward with more negotiations. I don't think Trump comes out of this looking bad at all. He came and stood on principle and didn't blink, and now has a stronger hand going into future negotiations. And the position that Chuck has taken has evolved. At first it was, we're not going to fund the border wall at all. Then we're not going to link DACA to the border wall funding. Now border wall funding is on the table, and Trump has successfully linked wall funding to the DACA debate. Trump does not look good here at all, and the Democrats totally miscalculated the polls on the issue. Just because 70% of the American people want to protect the Dreamers doesn't mean that's the highest priority of the American public.
Right. They said the American people were saying, okay, like, we want to help the Dreamers, but don't shut down the government because of it. And right before this show, Kimberly, we found out that President Trump apparently is currently meeting with Senator Doug Jones, the new senator from Alabama, and Senator Manchin from West Virginia, Democrats who apparently they're talking about immigration, so maybe they're trying to figure this out.
We're putting them in the reasonable category versus Upchuck, who's probably puking right now in his private bathroom because he's not coming out of this looking good at all. And not a good move, but, you know, this is the exact thing when you deal with like a businessman who knows how to negotiate, and now you have something that's married together that is very good for the Democrats, so how could they object to it? So it was just like a strategy in terms of going forward. But ultimately, forget about the politics. This is good for the American people, and it's in keeping with what the voters, what people want. And of course, you want to be good to people. We're a nation of immigrants, okay? But there has to be some specific structure and guidelines set up. And there's no need for us to protect people who are illegal immigrants that come in here and that are criminal recidivists and commit crimes of any nature. So President Trump, this wasn't something that he was going to give up on. He was taking a stand. He also has to, politically, and because it's the right thing to do, to not back off in terms of border security and protection. That is something that was pivotal in terms of what he ran on. You have a big problem with his base if he abandoned that. So right now, it's an advantage POTUS.
Can I just interrupt for a second to say, this is not about Donald Trump. You guys seem to think this is a win for Donald Trump. Let me just tell you a couple things over the weekend in Washington. One, the White House answering machine saying Democrats have shut down the government. They're responsible. It's the reason we can't answer the phone. And then a 30-second ad put out by Republicans that said Democrats are complicit whenever an illegal immigrant commits a crime. In fact, the kind of conversations among politicians was that, guess what? Trump wasn't informed, not involved, in fact, not trusted in terms of further negotiations on this. That's why it came down to something between Schumer and McConnell. I don't think, by the way, the American people have lost track of the fact that Republicans control House, Senate, and White House and have not passed a budget and still don't have a budget right now, and that even though we've kicked the can down the road to February 8th, they're going to have to make some kind of deal. And guess who's going to really wind up in terms of burden on the shoulders? Paul Ryan. House, Senate passes a bill, let's say February 8th, it's got to go to the House. And then what does Paul Ryan say to all of his Freedom Caucus guys? And if they don't do it, what does that look like for Republicans?
I asked David Hoppe that today. He used to work for Speaker Ryan, and he said that he thinks that the Speaker is pretty happy with how things turned out today, and he's not concerned about it. But I think, you know, whatever happens in this meeting today and going forward that President Trump is having with those Senate Democrats might make a difference. Greg, listen to what Mitch McConnell said earlier on the Senate floor.
I think if we've learned anything during this process, it's that a strategy to shut down the government over the issue of illegal immigration is something the American people didn't understand and would not have understood in the future. So I'm glad we've gotten past that, and we have a chance now to get back to work.
I think, Greg, one of the things is that most people didn't pay attention to this over the weekend because, one, there was a big football game that we're going to get to later in the show.
There was?
But also because the shutdown doesn't really have much of a bite until it gets into the later days. Basically, they've cushioned it so much, it's like a little shutdown.
Yeah, and also these shutdowns, how many have we talked about
on this show?
Yeah, we've created a jaded populace.
Yep.
America knows the drill. They know that government's like a romantic comedy. The ending is very predictable. So I always wonder if there's a solution for this, and why does this happen? Because it's not a secret ballot, so people cave to peer pressure of their own party. They can't do certain things. I'm certain a lot of those Democrats would have been happy to have voted for it earlier, but they can't. So if you had a blind vote on these situations, would there be better action because there's less impact from peer pressure? But on the other hand, it would be less transparent to the voter, and the voter would never know who the person. But in these situations, you have to wonder. It's like, what would happen if they could vote exactly how they felt? If they voted exactly how they felt.
90-10, it would have passed.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts from you, Jesse?
Nothing. Just that this was different because the media couldn't save the Democratic Party from the bad press of the shutdown. And this is the first time Republicans haven't really been fully blamed for a shutdown. So two firsts, and hopefully we don't do this brinkmanship again. It's boring and it's stupid.
It's coming.
Great closing statement.
It's coming big. So, I mean, I think that...
Bigly.
I would
do this again, Juan?
I would... Well, yeah, I don't think there's any way to get away from it doing it again.
I hope not, though.
Remember, you look at the Democrats who did not vote to bail everything out. And guess who they are? They're the ones that are likely running for president. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders.
But all the smart ones from red states that Trump won voted
they were
to keep it open.
They didn't vote for it on Friday.
Do you know one of my favorite things about the five?
Yeah.
Kimberly is the pronunciation police.
This is correct.
It's so good.
And I can't take
good.
it. I just can't help myself.
I liked earlier, I don't know if you caught it, and I don't know if you meant to, but the Schumer surrender was really good.
Did I say that?
Yeah. But I think
are those dentures?
I think I'm recovering from the Eagles game.
All right, new revelation.